Individualized suspicion of citizens' records is precisely the kind of overreach we fought a revolution over. The colonists did not appreciate a British government that would go door to door searching anyone and everyone without probable cause or suspicion. The lesson of the American Revolution was that this should never happen again, and yet the NSA's data collection program is the modern equivalent of this practice. President Obama cited Paul Revere in his speech, but Paul Revere rode through the streets to tell us the British were coming, not the Americans are coming.
All right, folks, that's Senator Rand Paul today announcing that he has officially filed his class action lawsuit against the Obama administration over the NSA data collection. Joining us now is the one and only former Secretary of Defense several times, a wonderful man, wonderful person who I've had the pleasure of meeting and knowing, Donald Rumsfeld. Hello, sir.
Hello, Steve. Good to be with you.
Always great to talk to you, and an honor indeed. All right, so let me, and by the way, author, of course, of Rumsfeld's Rules, the bestseller, which is doing so well, and I understand you're headed down to where the weather's warm to do some appearances and signings for the book. I
am indeed. I'm off to Tampa and then Palm Beach and have 4 or 5 different book signing events, which will be good fun.
It's going to be away from the snow, too, which is always a plus. So good luck to you on that. Okay, so what's your take, Mr. Secretary, on the NSA program as it currently exists and Rand Paul's attempt to rein it in?
Well, it seems to me that it's certainly useful to have a discussion about it. And it's important that people understand it and that the government periodically recognize the reality that technology evolves. And as technology evolves, capabilities increase. And as capabilities increase, one has to continually review to make sure you're doing precisely what it is you think you were doing and that you believe is the proper thing to do. I've been out of government now since 2006, and so I can't contend that I'm current on that program. I do know that it has been a valuable program and that it is not, in any sense that I remember, a snooping program. Metadata, it really tells information about contacts rather than content. And it seems to me that people have to make that distinction between the two. And I think that it's useful to have the Congress engaged. And as I understand it, at least in the past, and I believe to this day, the courts are engaged, the FISA, so-called FISA
right.
courts. Mm-hmm.
Is it useful, though, to have a member of Congress, such as Senator Paul, engaged by going to the criminal courts, if you will, by going to the regular court system over this, or not?
Oh, I don't know. I haven't had a chance to read his lawsuit, and I'm not a lawyer. I understand that others have filed suits, and certainly everyone has a right to contest actions of the government. And I think that the government has an obligation to review what it's doing and then defend what it's doing if it believes what it's doing is right.
Okay, fair enough. All right, I want you to listen to this little very quick montage of Barack Obama and Joe Biden. I think you might find it a little amusing. Here we go.
And Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat.
We've decimated Al-Qaeda's leadership.
Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat, and bin Laden is dead.
We decimated Al-Qaeda Central. We have eliminated Osama bin Laden.
Al-Qaeda is much weaker than it was when I came into office.
Osama bin Laden is dead, and General Motors is alive.
The war in Afghanistan is coming to a close. Al-Qaeda is on the path to defeat. Osama bin Laden is dead.
Now listen to James Clapper yesterday, the director of national intelligence. A second time in a couple of weeks he said this. This is cut 38.
Previous assessments from the president are not accurate.
Is Al-Qaeda on the run and on the path to defeat?
No, it is morphing and franchising itself, not only here but other areas of the world.
I mean, how embarrassing does that have to be for this administration?
Well, as it turns out, the truth is that the leadership within Al-Qaeda and Al-Qaeda offshoots replicates itself. As one person's killed, another person takes their place. And the overblown contentions that you recorded there from Vice President Biden and President Obama were just plain flat wrong and a misunderstanding of how the world works and how terrorist organizations function. The problem, when you say, isn't that embarrassing? Really, it should be embarrassing, but it really isn't, because very little of the mainstream media will even discuss that or point it out, and it will be lost in the noise of politics and so forth. So I think it's unfortunate that it is not an embarrassment to have the two top leaders of our country be so flat wrong on what they said about Al-Qaeda. It seems to me ought to be cited and noted because it goes directly to their credibility. I mean, hoping something's the case doesn't make it so.
And why, oh why, won't the United States mainstream media report this, Mr. Secretary?
Well, I guess they don't want to say anything that's adverse to the liberal view.
Yeah, that's a fair assessment, and it doesn't only apply here; it applies elsewhere as well. Okay, let me ask you also about Benghazi. How do you view from afar Benghazi? And then I'm going to want you to hear another clip. Go ahead. I mean, where do you think we are? Is it still something with questions that need to be answered? But actually, let me play you Darrell Issa. This is cut one, guys. Darrell Issa appearing on Bill Maher's show on HBO the other night, and I was shocked because he basically gave Hillary a pass and basically says here, as you'll hear, that this is about making sure this doesn't happen again, and really not about holding anybody else accountable. Here's cut one.
The fact is, Benghazi is a story of making sure it doesn't happen again. It's a story of will the system work when an ambassador says, I need more security, and instead he gets less security at a time in which the British pulled out of Benghazi because there were two attempts to kill the ambassador, one of which, quite frankly, blew up the car and killed his driver. We had a situation in which we should have pulled out of Benghazi or put a lot of security in there. We did neither.
So it's not connected with Hillary Clinton being Secretary of State?
Here's the amazing thing. The person that is responsible from our investigation is the Undersecretary, Patrick Kennedy. He's a career non-political appointee.
Now, I've had Republicans come on and take very big exception to this. Lindsey Graham, for one, came on and said, I vehemently disagree with Darrell Issa. It's about holding people accountable, and he believes Hillary Clinton has to still be held accountable. Where do you stand on this?
Well, it seems to me you have to look at it in three pieces. In the first place, if the United States is going to put people in overseas posts, they have an obligation to see that they're properly protected. In this instance, there was widespread knowledge, as was pointed out by Congressman Issa. The British knew that there were al-Qaeda threats, and they pulled their people out because they knew they couldn't protect them. Our people knew there were al-Qaeda threats, and they not only did not protect them, but they didn't pull them out. And that's, in my view, is a neglect of important responsibilities. And the idea that it falls to someone down the line, I think, is a misunderstanding. I mean, clearly the Secretary of State, Hillary Clinton, is the person responsible.
Yeah, well, I'm glad to hear you say that. Let me ask you, and of course we're talking to Donald Rumsfeld, who is the author of Rumsfeld's Rules. And watch this. I don't know if the camera can. I'm standing up right now. I'm out of the camera view, but I'm standing up in your honor. I actually had Nicole Wallace yesterday, and she actually quoted you. I don't remember what the quote was, but she quoted Donald, as Donald Rumsfeld once said. So just so you know that your ears should have been burning yesterday in a good way. But let me ask you about Benjamin Netanyahu is going to visit the White House in March. It was announced today. Wouldn't you love to be a fly on the wall for that one? What do you? I mean, where does our relationship stand? What do you think of John Kerry saying, if Israel doesn't, pony up at the peace table, there'll be another intifada. If Israel doesn't pony up at the peace table, there'll be a worldwide boycott of Israel from the European Union. And I've never seen anything like this from a U.S. Secretary of State.
Well, there is a theory that some people subscribe to, that it is possible to take two countries or two parties in this case, and grab them by the scruff of the neck and push them together and have them make a deal. Now, the reality is that that's utter nonsense. People have to see something as in their interest, or no matter how hard they're pushed, they're simply not going to agree, and if they do agree, it won't stick. It won't last. And in this instance, it takes persuasion, it takes time, and it takes conviction on both sides' part that it is in their interest. And it is very clear that the Israelis know themselves, they know their country, they know their neighbors. They have a very small country. They have enemies on all sides except for some water on one side. They have a history of the Holocaust, and they have a very small margin for error. They can't afford to make a mistake. And I doubt that they will. I think their leadership is courageous and prudent and respectful and understanding of history.
2 Iranian warships, finally, Mr. Secretary, headed towards the U.S. They're called rust buckets to send a message. Iran also ran a video on state television of them bombing Tel Aviv and the USS Abraham Lincoln in response to a mock attack on Iran, or a possible attack on Iran. This is, we give them what they want at the bargaining table. I mean, does it make any sense to you?
Well, of course, it does, if one looks at it from their perspective. They are basically getting what they want. They have been able to get the sanctions reduced. They've been able to continue their nuclear programs. They have been able to lie and get away with it. And there's precious little penalty for their behavior.
Right. How does it make sense from our point of view, though?
Well, it doesn't, obviously. Yeah. I mean, I guess that's the definition of something, to keep trying to do the same thing and expecting a different outcome.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, we know what the outcome has been. We know how they've managed their affairs. Now, I can understand someone saying, well, there's hope because it's new leadership, but the fact of the matter is the new leadership is still there under the same Ayatollahs. Nothing's changed at the top.
Yeah, and you need their permission to run for president, absolutely. Mr. Secretary, it's always a pleasure. I look forward to the next time. Anyone in Florida, look up where Donald Rumsfeld will be, Tampa, West Palm, the whole state, and the book all over the country, Rumsfeld's Rules. And boy, oh boy, I just long for the days of Bush and Rumsfeld and people who put America first. But that's another story. Sir, have a great trip down to Florida.
Thanks so much, Steve.
Thank you. That's Donald Rumsfeld, ladies and gentlemen, here on the Steve Malzberg Show. When we come back, Lise Wheel will join us, and she will give us her legal opinion on the lawsuit filed by Rand Paul against the Obama administration regarding the NSA. All that and more straight ahead right here on the Steve Malzberg Show, Newsmax Television.